Hi.
How are you today?
Good. Do I get a discount here because of my white privilege? I don't.
So,
Okay, so I've been hearing I have like white privilege, and people have been saying that to me, but I'm not sure if it gets me a discount anywhere.
So first of all, let's start with the notion of white privilege, which has become this buzzword that you hear all the time now. White privilege is responsible for everything up to and including the Kardashians. It's responsible for everything, white privilege. White privilege is a way to silence anybody who is not of color. That's what white privilege is. It is just a leftist bullshit term that means shut up because you are not a member of a minority group, a privileged minority group in the leftist space. It's reverse racism of the highest order. You're basically saying to white people who aren't racist, and you can't find any proof of their racism, that they must be racist because they're white. That is called racism. Right? The vast majority of people who play in the NBA are black. Very few of them are 5'9" Jews. Right? That is not because there is some sort of anti-Semitic conspiracy to keep 5'9" Jews out of the National Basketball Association. I mean, I can't complain that I don't play for the Los Angeles Lakers, right? Because the reality is that in America, it tends to be, just as a general principle, meritocracy rules. That's true from the NBA to the halls of academia, and it is certainly true on college campuses. Capitalism is colorblind. The only color that capitalism cares about is green. Okay, capitalism seriously doesn't care about your color, it doesn't care about your race, it doesn't care about your sexuality. I will tell you one area in which there was discrimination, and that is the widespread perception that black people were not getting loans led the federal government to create a subprime lending program specifically designated to get people of minority ethnic status into homes they could not afford with bad credit. Okay, if it had all been lending discrimination, you would have assumed that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac would have been fine. There would have never been a subprime mortgage crisis. The idea that, especially on college campuses, that black folks on college campuses, people of color on college campuses, are suffering from some unspecified white privilege, really talk to the Asian guy who has to score 230 points above the black guy in order to get in the same college before you tell me about white privilege. Okay, the fact is that affirmative action programs across the country, de facto and not de facto and in law as well, all of these programs are specifically created in order to get ethnic minority students with lower SAT scores into the building.
In 2012, there was a riot in San Francisco because the Giants won the World Series. Again, I don't get it. Apparently, white people love to riot when they're happy. Strange. In 2011, there was a riot in Vancouver when the Canucks lost the Stanley Cup. Okay, slightly better, even though still dumb because it's a game, sports, rioting over that. In 2012, there was a riot in Kentucky when the Wildcats won the NCAA tournament. College sports, that's how much they care about this, that they'll fuck shit up over it. In 2004, 2007, and 2013, there were riots in Boston because of baseball. The media covered these other riots, sure, but they didn't cover them in the same way. And this is where the whole idea of white privilege comes into play. It's the idea that if you're white and you engage in the same actions that a black person engages in, it's viewed through a lens that's more positive in its undertones. Not that, hey, it's totally excusable, but it's viewed as like, oh, here are a couple of hooligans. Don't let a few bad apples spoil the bunch. Yeah, they're wrong, but don't judge everybody based off the actions of these few crazy people. That's what you hear when we're dealing with sports riots or other riots. But when it comes to, like in Ferguson, you get this tone from the media, like they're all wrong, they're all bad, they're all engaging in it, there are no peaceful protesters, and you know how those goddamn criminals are. There's a difference in the way it's viewed by society. Another example is back during Katrina, when there was looting, when white people were looting, and this was referenced in the Raw Story article about this, when white people were looting, the media covered it as it's people looking for food. That's how they covered it. When the black people did the same thing, they just called it looting. Therein lies white privilege. It's the idea that if the person is one of your own, well, you know they mean well, so even if they did something fucked up, it's just one person, don't let it spoil the whole group. But if it's a black person doing something bad, well, I mean, that obviously is demonstrable, and And it shows it's a microcosm of the entire community, and they all believe that, and that's just how they are in their nature. So this is very important, and this is a good story to keep in mind when you start hearing the ridiculous generalizations.
A few years back, white Americans were asked whether or not we believed that racial discrimination was still a significant national problem for people of color, or whether it was just a problem, like junk mail. Wrong phone number, 2 in the morning, you can't get back to sleep, it's raining and you want to go outside for a jog, a problem. But one you'll get over, Whether it wasn't much of a problem, wasn't a problem at all, or we just weren't sure. They also asked black and brown folk this question. Folks of color, it won't surprise you, said, yes, it is a significant problem, actually, and not just because I read about it in a sociology textbook. I actually have lived it and would be more than happy to tell you what kind of problem it's been, but these were pollsters, man, they didn't care about that. They just wanted the yes or no, then they were on to the next house. Then they asked white folks, is it or is it not a significant national problem, racial discrimination for people of color and against people of color? And only 6%, 6 out of 100 said yes, that it was a significant national problem. Just to give you an idea of how bad that is, I would have you compare it to a survey taken a few years earlier where approximately 12% of white Americans said we believe there was a fairly decent chance that Elvis Presley might still be alive. I don't know how good you are at math. I'm not very good myself, but that's a ratio that I can calculate. What that means is that white Americans are twice as likely to believe that Elvis might still be alive than we are to believe what people of color tell us they experience on a fairly regular basis. That is denial so profound as to boggle the mind, but there it is. Denial. In every generation, 2007, 1963, the 30s, the 1890s, the 1850s, my point being that in every generation, members of the dominant group have said there is no problem. And in every generation, without fail, we have been wrong. And in every generation, people of color, those who were the targets of that oppression and subordination, have said there is a problem. And in every generation, without fail, they have been right. So the question for us today is, what are the odds, honestly, that people of color who have never gotten it wrong have suddenly lost their frickin' minds and have suddenly become unable to see truth and to separate it from fiction? And counter to that, what are the odds that white folks who have never gotten it right yet have suddenly become highly, highly perceptive? The odds are pretty long. And again, it's not because white folks are insensitive or hard-hearted, let alone stupid, but it is that those of us who are white have the luxury of not knowing black and brown truth. We don't know because we don't have to know. We are not tested on it. If I don't know what people of color experience, what happens to me in this country? Virtually nothing. But if people of color don't know my reality, if people of color don't know white reality better than white folks have to know it, if they cannot regurgitate it to us better than we would ever be able to regurgitate it to ourselves, all hell breaks loose. So people of color are going to have to know white history, white literature, white art, white theater, white poetry, white drama. I know we don't call it that. That's sort of the point. When your stuff is the stuff against which everybody else's stuff is compared and found lacking, you don't have to name it. It's just the norm. That's why, for those still confused, we don't have White History Month, because we have several. They go by the tricky names of May and June, July, August, September. Pretty much any month that we have not designated as someone else's month, that's White History Month.
I don't care about, let me put one thing first. I don't care about your feelings. Like, just be perfectly clear, I care nothing about your feelings. I don't want to hear about your feelings. I don't want to hear about your subjective emotions. I don't want to hear about your heart cries out to that. I don't care. You're not my wife. You're not my kid. I don't give a damn.